Cool. So we are looking at CSS and doing a review. I'm just going to copy this code and drop it in here and overwrite everything, overwrite for all, and then close these. Because that 0, 1 was the first thing we were dealing with, and now we're dealing with these. And we're going to build on this. And so we've seen how to use an element selector. We've seen how to use an ID, only one of those per page. And we've seen how to use a class, as many of those as you want per page. And if we look at this, so reveal this in Finder. There it is. All right, that's what we're looking at so far. And one of the other things we could do is we could have multiple elements. And so maybe we wanted all divs, and so we had a paragraph here, and inside that paragraph was some lorem. All right, ipsum lorem. And that was emit that I just hammered out there. And so anybody want to see that emit again? It's a paragraph, and it has a descendant of lorem. And then when I hit tab, there's this functionality built into my IDE, my integrated development environment. And that's called emit. And there's the emit cheat sheet, which you could Google, emit cheat sheet. And that emit cheat sheet, I have no internet connection because it slipped out. That emit cheat sheet is, come on, baby. You're back now. That emit cheat sheet, come on, baby. I just plugged you in. There we go. That emit cheat sheet is right here. And so it's just a shorthand notation to quickly build out a bunch of HTML code. And that's the emit cheat sheet. So we're just doing a review. That's why this is going kind of quick. So there's that paragraph, and now I could say, you know what, apply H1. There's my selectors. You could have multiple selectors in a rule set. So this rule set, this declarations in the declaration block, and just pay attention to the language I'm using there. Declarations. This is the declaration in the declaration block, right? And these are the selectors. And this is all a rule set, that entire thing. So that entire rule set allows us to select both H1 and P. And that's an element. Those are element selectors. I could have also done, you know, cowboy up here, right, and applied some formatting there to cowboy. And I could have also said, hey, you know, I could have also said any body tag that has a child which is got the ID of cowboy. So you start to see, you know, selectors that are mixing things up. Sometimes there's multiple selectors. Sometimes there's selectors which get more specific. The simpler, the better. You don't want to complicate your code. You want to keep your code as simple as possible. It's one of the arts of programming is, you know, how do you make things which are lean, clean, readable, and you know, other people could come along and understand exactly what's happening. All right, so that's those are the selectors, and then you know, now that we've got that, the next thing maybe we'll take a look at is we've seen some properties and we've seen those selectors, and I guess the next thing to look at will be just some of the child stuff. And to do that, I want a bunch of divs, and so I'll do like 3 divs, and 1, 2, 3, and then I'm gonna have like you know, a section, and then inside that section maybe I'll have, you know, 3 divs, and that'll be 4. Whoops, I didn't do 3 times 3. And that'll be 4, 5, 6, and then inside here. Yeah, I'm just thinking here, 4, 5, 6, and then we might maybe do an aside, and inside that aside, you know, 2 more divs, and that's 7 and 8, and then we could have, you know, 2 divs here, 9, 10, and then we could have heading 2 something, and then we could have div 11. So now, whoa, that's going to be kind of interesting because they're all going to have this height and the width, right? because of this right here. That's going to be applied to all of them. I guess we'll just roll with it, but let's make them smaller. We'll do them 100. Or we'll do 50, so they're not very high at all. And then remind me to talk about the box model. And then we'll also just put a little space between them, because if we look at this right now, interestingly, right, we don't see the outline there. Why don't we see the outline there? And let me lower this pixel to like 5. And same with this one. So why don't we see anything about that div there? The reason why is because those guys don't have border, right? And so I could do a border 1 pic solid black. And so there are those borders. Now why is it this every div gets 1 pic solid black? So we're slipping into specificity here. And then down here, the ID cowboy gets, 5 pics groove red. Why is it that this is red and these are blue, when up here we said they're black? How does specificity work? Do you remember? So if we go and we look, CSS Specificity calculator, we will see this calculator, and we'll see that elements are in the 1 place, classes are in the 2, and IDs are in the 100, right? So classes are in the 2, IDs are in the 100, and elements are in the 1. So elements are in the 1, classes are in the 10s, and IDs are in the 100s. 1s, 10s, 100s, right? So if we have just an element selector like div that has a CSS specificity weight of 1, if we have a class selector like cowboy that has a CSS specificity weight of 10, and we have a class selector like, oh, this is what cowboy was, then that's 100. That's an ID, right? And the class was many tings. Many tings, right? That's a 10. So this is a heavier weight. And both of those are heavier than an element, which is a 1. So even if I place this down here, the same code, right? Same result. Because even though this comes later in the flow of the code, these still have a higher weight, so they're going to win. Right? No change. But what about if I was to change this to another, right? And then I added the class another to all of these things. Now we have some conflicts. So the first div has got cowboy as an ID and class. And both cowboy and ID and class, right? Both the ID and the class. The first one has the ID cowboy and the class another, right? And if you look at these, cowboy and another are both applying a border. They apply that border, and they also apply this border. Come on. That one? I was hoping I could highlight both. But of those two, which one is going to be applied? 5 pics groove red or 1 pic solid black? Because they're both being applied to that element. Which one's going to win? 5 pics groove red, right? Because that is the heavier specificity. And so this will be 5 pics groove red now. The blues disappeared for some reason. Why did the blues disappear? Because between many tings and another, these are both getting 2 classes applied. What's the weight of many tings? 10. What's the weight of another? 10. They have the same specificity weight. So which one's going to win? It's the last one applied. Right? And so they just got a solid. And if I change this, change the order of this, are we going to see the blue again? Yes, we are. I thought. Am I looking at the right page? We have one pixel black, another, and then many things. 5-pick screw blue. It's being applied last. So maybe does the order here make a difference? So it's the order right in there that's making the difference. That's fascinating. That's new for me, new information. But that, you know, like usually you don't have two things like that. Usually it'd be like this. You know, like there'd be only one class applied to each one. So the main point being that CSS specificity. And you've got those different rules for determining specificity, and we don't need another. Let's see what it looks like now. Wow, our code is just looking wacky. We've got, we lost the div, or we define a div of a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. There we go. And let's do the height of like 20, 30 pixels. Cool. And then we lost the div border, 1 pic, solid black. Cool. All right, so next one we'll take a look at child selectors. This one kind of turned out to be specificity.